In this video, we're going to be breaking down 5 MLB games happening on June 14, 2026, and providing you with a side pick and a total pick for every matchup, 10 free MLB picks in total. As usual, stick around until the end because you won't want to miss out on anything. Philadelphia Phillies versus Milwaukee Brewers. Honestly, the vibe around this one feels a little off when you really sit with it, and that's where things get interesting. You've got the team perched on top of their division, playing in their own backyard, and somehow they're the side most of the public is shrugging at. That doesn't quite line up when you stack it against how Milwaukee has played at home all year, sitting at 22-14 in their own park and grinding out at bats the way a contender does. Their starter today is a young lefty who's quietly been one of the steadier arms in the rotation, and the bigger story is what's been happening every time he gets the ball as the lesser-priced side. His team has not lost a single one of those games this season. That's not luck, that's a pattern, and patterns like that tend to mean something when the market keeps treating it like a coincidence. Now, let me back up for a second, because Philadelphia's case is real too. They're sending one of the best starters in the league to the mound, and pretending he doesn't exist would be lazy. Here's the thing though, the Phillies just burned through a big chunk of their bullpen in a back-and-forth slugfest the night before, and that stuff lingers, especially in a day game where every late inning starts to feel like the 11th. Milwaukee's lineup, meanwhile, got shut down by an elite lefty on Friday and then came back swinging on Saturday for 17 hits, which is usually the sign of a group that's locked in, not one that's lost the plot. This is a club that protects leads at home, leans on a deep bullpen, and frankly doesn't mind the disrespect tag in their own building. Roll it all together, the home form, the starter's underdog pattern, the tired arms on the visiting side, the lineup that's clearly seeing the ball well, and the side worth backing here pretty much makes its own case. As our first pick for this matchup, the Milwaukee Brewers money line is our full game side pick. Two lefties are climbing the hill today, and not the kind of lefties you'd want to see if you were hoping for a track meet. Philadelphia is rolling out a guy who's basically been the most efficient starter in the National League this season, the kind of arm that works quick, throws strikes, and takes the wind right out of an opposing dugout before they even settle in. Milwaukee's counterpunch is another southpaw who misses bats and whose underlying numbers actually hold up under the hood, not just on the back of his baseball card. You don't often get two arms with this kind of profile sharing the same afternoon, and when you do, the early innings tend to crawl rather than crackle. Friday's opener of this series was a perfect snapshot of how quiet a game between these two can get when one side has a dominant lefty in charge, with the visiting offense managing just one hit all night. Now, I'll be the first to admit Saturday flipped that script entirely, a chaotic 17-hit affair with both bullpens leaking late, so the counter-argument is sitting right there in plain sight. The difference today is what's standing on the mound. This isn't a back-end starter against a struggling veteran. This is two of the more dependable arms in the league going head-to-head. There's also the day game factor after a late-night finish. Hitters' timing tends to lag a half step. The shadows at this ballpark can play tricks in the afternoon, and quick innings start to compound. Both bullpens got squeezed pretty hard last night, which sounds like a setup for late runs on the surface, but it usually pushes managers to lean harder on their best leverage arms and to ride their starters as deep as they can. Stack the pitching matchup, the lefty-on-lefty trouble both lineups tend to have, the tendency for these specific arms to work efficient outings, and a controlled indoor environment where weather has no chance to puff anything up, and the scoreboard tends to stay a lot quieter than the casual viewer expects. As our second pick for this matchup, under the projected total is our full game total pick. Quick commercial break. You know the deal. If you want to get our exclusive best sport picks to take things to the next level, then check out our Patreon in the link down below where we offer our best single picks, parlay picks, and much more. Go check it out. Commercial break over. Now back to the game. Colorado Rockies versus Athletics. Something quietly interesting is happening with this Athletics squad, and it's the kind of detail you can either lean into or look right past. They keep finding ways to win, sure, but the manner has been less swagger and more white knuckles. 4 straight comeback victories sounds dominant on paper until you remember that comebacks only happen when you've been trailing in the first place. Friday closed at 6-4, Saturday at 7-5. Neither game ever felt safely tucked away, and both swung late. Colorado walked into Las Vegas already carrying road struggles on its resume, hung tough in both games, and that tells you plenty about how this Sunday afternoon is likely to shape up. The Rockies sitting at 26-45 with a 12-25 mark away from home is the lazy, easy read on this game, and that's the version most casual eyes will settle for without a second glance. Here's the thing though, the Athletics aren't exactly a runaway juggernaut at 35-35, and their home tally of 15-18 isn't the sort of number that screams lay the chalk and go to lunch. The right-hander Colorado is rolling out today has been the steadiest arm in that rotation, a guy who works the edges, mixes his shapes, and survives on feel rather than raw heat. That kind of style tends to travel a lot better than people expect, particularly against an Oakland lineup that has shown a clear willingness to chase when the breaking stuff is commanded down. You don't even need to believe Colorado wins outright to find a real angle here. You just have to believe the game stays inside the same competitive neighborhood the first two contests have lived in. Looking honestly at recent form on both sides, there's nothing in the tea leaves screaming blowout in either direction. The Athletic starter today has been bleeding hard contact lately, and the visitors happen to roll multiple left-handed bats into the order built to feast on exactly that kind of profile. Honestly, taking the cushion in a game where these two clubs have been this evenly matched through 18 innings of head-to-head action is the kind of value you don't really get to pass up. As our first pick for this matchup, the Colorado Rockies to cover the spread as underdogs is our full-game side pick. Vegas in mid-June isn't exactly the environment pitchers daydream about, and that's putting it kindly. First pitch is parked squarely in the triple-digit zone, with a steady southwest breeze running across the desert floor, and that kind of air tends to do favors for hitters that nobody ever bothers asking permission for. Hot, dry, thin air simply carries a baseball further than cool, dense air does, and it's not folklore, it's basic physics that big bats cash in on every single summer. Layer in the small detail that Las Vegas ballpark wasn't built to big league dimensions in the first place, since this is a AAA facility pulling temporary home park duty, and the warning track starts feeling more like a narrow hallway. The southpaw the home side is sending out today has been giving up the long ball at a worryingly steady rhythm, with home runs leaking out of his outings in something like 9 of his last 10 starts. That isn't a slump anymore, that's a pattern, and patterns at this level rarely repair themselves on a baking Sunday afternoon in the desert. On the visiting side, Colorado's pitching staff has been the worst run prevention group in the entire league this year, and the relievers behind the starter have been carrying heavy workloads through this road swing. Both lineups bring legitimate thump from both sides of the plate, and the first two games of this series produced 10 runs and then 12, with Saturday's tally creeping right up toward the bar even though it technically slipped under at the final whistle. Here's the part worth being honest about. The number this market is asking the game to clear is a steep ask, and that's the cleanest counter-argument anyone could fire back at this angle. That said, when you stack up the heat, the park dimensions, both pitching profiles, and the fact that both bullpens have been leaning on tired arms, the path to a loud scoreboard feels a whole lot more reachable than the path to some quiet pitcher's duel. You don't even need fireworks to make it happen, just a couple of crooked innings, and crooked innings have been showing up in this series at nearly predictable intervals. As our second pick for this matchup, over the projected total is our full game total pick. Chicago Cubs versus San Francisco Giants, Sunday afternoon at Oracle Park, the kind of day where the Bay Area decides to make itself part of the broadcast. One club is showing up with a chip on its shoulder and a series lead already in the bag, while the other is fighting against the gravity of a season that has gone sideways pretty much from the jump. Here's the thing about the home side right now. They keep running into the same maddening pattern. Their ace turns in beautiful work, the lineup forgets how to put runs on the board, and the bullpen finds a fresh way to give the game back in the late innings. You only have to look at how the last week or two has played out to see it. Quality outings, slim margins, and then the wheels come off after the seventh. Meanwhile, the visitors strolled into San Francisco sitting at 37-34, took the opener with a splashdown into McCovey Cove, and then handled the middle game with a level of comfort you do not usually see from a road team out here. That is 2 games in this series, 2 clean wins, and a Cubs club that suddenly looks like it remembers what it was supposed to be all along. When you stack up the form lines, the visitors have just been the better baseball team in this matchup for the last several days, full stop. A road team riding real momentum against a home side that has dropped the first 2 of the set and keeps tripping over its own feet late is exactly the kind of spot where the market tends to leave value on the table. As our first pick for this matchup, the Chicago Cubs money line is our full game side pick. Now, about the scoreboard for this one. Oracle Park has a personality, and that personality is downright unfriendly to a fence. You get the marine layer hanging around in the afternoon, that classic damp Bay Area chill that adds a little weight to every fly ball, and a wind forecast that has the breeze coming in off the water at a real clip. This is not the postcard shot you take when you are looking for a slugfest. The first two games of this series already told the story, 5-1 and 6-1, neither one anywhere close to a high-scoring affair. A day game in this kind of ballpark tends to feel like a chess match more than a track meet, especially when the marine layer is doing its thing. On the mound, the home club is rolling out its ace right after one of his best stretches of the year, including a recent home outing where he carved up the opposing lineup deep into the night. The visiting starter is not winning any Cy Young votes this season, sure, but a venue where balls die in the gaps and pitchers feel the park breathing in their favor is exactly the kind of soft landing spot a veteran arm can navigate just fine. Add in the getaway day rhythm, where nobody really wants a 4-hour slog before a flight home, and the pace of the game tends to keep the scoreboard quieter than it might otherwise be. The recipe just does not point toward fireworks. As our second pick for this matchup, under the projected total is our full game total pick. Tampa Bay Rays versus Los Angeles Angels. Honestly, this whole series has been a strange little nightmare for the team coming in from Florida. And you can see why a casual glance at the standings makes that feel weird. One club is sitting first in the American League East with a record of 40-27, and the other is buried way down the standings at 29-42. That gap matters, even when the scoreboard from the last two nights tells you something different. Here's the thing, the home side caught the visitors at a moment where the bats just couldn't find anything, and a 4-3 squeaker followed by an 8-0 shutout makes the road team look broken when they're really not. Roster-wide, the case is pretty clean. The visiting club's run differential, their on-base profile, and their bullpen depth even with a few arms shelved, all point to a team that should be priced higher than essentially a coin flip on the road. The mound matchup is where this gets really interesting. The home side is rolling out a right-hander who has been working his way back from a long injury layoff, and the early returns this year have been pretty brutal across the board, with traffic on the bases in nearly every outing. Command has been the issue, hard contact has been the issue, and even when the velocity reads fine, the in-game execution just hasn't matched it. The road team, on the other hand, is essentially running a relief-heavy game plan with a right-hander they picked up from Seattle earlier this year, the kind of move this front office has turned into an art form over the seasons. You know, that whole "we'll get 5 guys 2 innings each and dare you to time it up" thing they do better than anyone. There's also the spot itself to think about. Getaway day, day game in Anaheim, third game of a series the home club has already locked up. That's a textbook letdown scenario for the team that just got their fill, and a wake-up scenario for the visitor flying out for a freeway trip series at Dodger Stadium next. This particular front office's clubs also tend to play their sharpest baseball after a tough loss. And getting blanked is about as tough as it gets for a clubhouse that prides itself on grinding at bats. The value sitting on the road favorite here is genuinely meaningful given the gap in talent and the trajectory of the two starters. As our first pick for this matchup, the Tampa Bay Rays money line is our full game side pick. A few things really jump out about the environment for this one. First, the weather is doing a fence a favor. Warming up nicely into the 80s by mid-afternoon, clear skies, dry air, and that classic Southern California breeze that tends to carry well-struck fly balls toward the seats rather than knocking them down. Day games in Anaheim during June have a long history of playing bigger than the park's overall reputation might suggest, and this one fits the profile pretty neatly. Beyond the weather, the pitching staffs lining up here both have real cracks. The home starter has been one of the league's most generous arms in terms of letting up hard contact this year, and his outings have rarely stayed quiet, even in wins. Meanwhile, the visiting bullpen, despite its long-running reputation as a strength, has been leaking runs at one of the worst clips in the American League over recent weeks, with multiple high-leverage arms either banged up or still trying to find their form. That's a recipe for traffic on both sides of the box score. You add in the offensive context, both lineups carry legitimate thump in the middle, and both have shown the ability to string at-bats together when they get a starter who can't put hitters away. The path here doesn't need a fireworks show, just one inning where someone loses the strike zone and a couple of well-placed swings, and you're already in business. Throw in the bullpen fatigue factor for the road team after stretching their pen across 2 emotionally rough games, and the path to crooked numbers gets even wider. There's a counter-argument worth respecting. Sure, Angel Stadium has historically played a touch on the pitcher-friendly side, and getaway day games can sometimes drift into quick-pitch, fast-tempo territory. But the matchup signals just keep pointing the other way. Both starters have shown a pattern of inviting damage, and the supporting cast behind them hasn't been airtight either. As our second pick for this matchup, over the projected total is our full game total pick. Texas Rangers versus Boston Red Sox. Honestly, there's a vibe at Fenway right now that's a little hard to ignore. Boston came home from a rough road stretch and flipped the script in this series, putting up double digits Friday and then backing it up Saturday, like they suddenly remembered who was supposed to be the home team. That kind of momentum tends to carry into a Sunday night spotlight game, where the crowd is buzzing, the cameras are on, and the visiting club is staring down a sweep. Texas, meanwhile, hasn't quite figured out who they are this year, sitting at 34-36 overall and 17-22 on the road, which tells you most of what you need to know about how they travel. The veteran righty getting the ball for the Rangers has been chased around by the long ball this season, giving up homers in bunches, and Fenway with that short porch in left is the last place you want to be working through that particular headache. The young lefty Boston is countering with has been one of the steadier surprises in their rotation, pitching with way more poise than a guy his age usually shows and quietly stacking quality starts. You can argue the other side. Sure, the Rangers starter has lived in this ballpark before and knows the room cold, and Boston's full-season home record is genuinely ugly, hanging somewhere around 12-21 going in. But recent form tends to trump cumulative numbers in baseball more than people admit, and the bats in this Boston lineup are awake in a way they just haven't been for most of this year. Throw in a Rangers club playing without some of its biggest names on the road, and you've got the kind of spot where the price feels light on the side that's been doing the actual work the last 48 hours. As our first pick for this matchup, the Boston Red Sox money line is our full game side pick. Here's the thing about this game that's getting a little buried under the noise of the last two nights. Both starting pitchers are walking in with real reasons to feel good about themselves, the Boston lefty riding a genuinely quality stretch of work, and the Texas veteran sitting on solid season numbers despite an outing or two that got loud. That's the kind of pitching matchup that quietly drags scoring down once you get past the first turn through the order, especially with both managers ready to lean on rested bullpens after travel days loom on the schedule. The weather angle plays into it too, with a forecast that has Boston warm and muggy during the day, but cooling into the upper 70s by first pitch, basically no rain in the picture, and nothing pushing balls out of the yard. That's a pretty neutral setup for Fenway, maybe even leaning a touch toward the pitchers once the sun is fully down. The skeptic in you is already pointing at the first two games of this series, which had zero problem clearing a number like this. And honestly, that's a fair counterpoint that deserves to sit on the table. But baseball doesn't repeat itself just because the schedule says it should, and game 3 of 3 after a pair of crooked numbers often turns into a completely different animal, more chess than slugfest. Add a national TV stage where starters tend to bear down a notch more, plus the natural regression that follows a series where the bats have already had their fireworks, and the picture tilts toward a game played in tighter quarters than the betting market seems to expect. As our second pick for this matchup, under the projected total is our full game total pick. That's all for now, so if you have any other games you would like reviewed, then leave a comment down below with the game you would like analyzed, subscribe to our channel, leave a like on this video, and we'll get to it as soon as we possibly can. We would also love to hear your opinion on the picks presented to you in this video, whether you agree or disagree with them, so leave a comment down below and do let us know.